Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, Damar Hamlin's literal heart-stopping injury hit close to home because he's a hometown kid. He's from McKees Rocks, but also because Steelers fans have seen life-changing injuries like it before. Football is a violent game by its nature, so why do we keep watching it? Sports writer Martenzie Johnson is breaking down why the NFL games continue to go on. It's Tuesday, January 17th. I'm Morgan Moody, and this is CityCast Pittsburgh. Damar Hamlin is, thankfully recovering in Buffalo now after going into cardiac arrest on the field during the Monday Night Football game in Cincinnati. Besides the horror of, seeing that and hoping that Damar would survive that injury, what else did you find that was kind of unsettling about all of this?
The most unsettling thing to me about all of this was really the public and NFL reaction to kind of this horrific injury. Like you said, obviously his health and safety are the number one concern, but the ease at which we as society can move on from these devastating injuries and kind of that next man up mentality in the NFL where one person goes down, well, he's got a replacement, so throw him in there and we'll forget all about the person who got hurt. Now, in the case of Damar, we didn't forget him, at least for this last week. But normally the case is that someone gets hurt tragically. It can be death. It can be lose the ability to walk. It can be, in this case, lose the ability to breathe. And we just forget about that person because we care about the next touchdown. We care about the next Super Bowl winner. And that just overall has concerned me for years, but especially in this case.
Right. There was Skip Bayless, the sports commentator, who got a lot of flack for coming out and saying, well, this is the end of the season. This game is really important. When are we going to restart it? Or, when are they going to play again? And there were, broadcasters, the broadcasters for that game had also said that the NFL was going to restart this game. The NFL came out and said that they had no intention to do that. But I don't know. Do you think they were going to? I do.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's why I'm one of the few people, and it pains me to say this, who wasn't even upset with Skip for what he said, because in normal circumstances, the NFL, when someone's laid out on the field, has to be carted off, sent in an ambulance to a hospital, they restart the game. We saw that for the Pittsburgh people, Ryan Shazier. I put this in my story that I wrote that he was carted off at 8:40 p.m. when he got paralyzed a couple years ago, and Ben Roethlisberger was throwing an interception 20 minutes later. That's just the ease at which they move on. So I don't know why anyone else would have thought the game wouldn't be restarted, because in the history of this sport, someone gets carted off, we break for about 15, 20 minutes, and then it's right back to it.
Are we desensitized to it? Because you're right. I've seen, yes, players get paralyzed. Players have compound fractures that break, and they are horrific to look at as well. Are we just completely desensitized to everything going on in this game?
Yeah, a man wasn't breathing on the field for at least 10 minutes. He went to the hospital and was on a ventilator, or AKA life support, for a couple of days. And we were all just like, well, I hope he gets better. He could not breathe on his own. That's traumatic.
Right.
So, again, this is kind of the American way, but for football specifically, yeah, we're just so used to these players getting knocked out, knocked down, that we never take into account that this is someone's father, this is someone's son, this is someone's cousin, brother, whatever it may be. And they'll never forget this, but let a week go by and we will.
Yeah, since the game, Damar's GoFundMe for his local charity to support kids here in McKees Rocks has raised millions. At the time we're recording, this is more than $7 million, but that's probably, going to be even higher by the time this episode comes out. It's being reported that money will continue to go to support the kids, but I don't know. Do you think, all that money makes up for what happened?
I think the charity was a stand-in to kind of distract us from what actually happened. So we raised $7 million. So that makes us feel better about what happened to Hamlin. And it gives us justification to then watch the games this past weekend and watch the games that coming up this weekend and so on and so forth. It's a good deed. And again, I don't want to, downplay how great it is that millions of dollars were raised, but I don't think it was because they care so much about these kids that he was raising money for in the first place. I just think it was, I need to do something to make me feel better about this situation. And if I, multimillionaire, give $5,000 to this cause, or if I, regular human being, give $100 to this cause, I'll feel better about this. So now I don't feel as guilty about watching, hundreds of other Damar Hamlins run into each other on Sundays.
In the NFL, you need to play for 3 years before you get a pension. And Damar has only played for 2. In your article, it says he wasn't even supposed to be playing in this game.
Can I tell the audience about that? So Damar Hamlin wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the year. Micah Hyde was a starting safety for the Bills. But in week 2, Micah Hyde had a season-ending injury to his neck that required surgery. So Hamlin was filling in. That same game that Micah Hyde got injured, Dane Jackson is his name, I believe, is another defensive back for the Bills, and he got carted off the field and sent to the hospital as well. Like, again, you talk about being desensitized. 3 defensive backs for the same team were wheeled off on a stretcher, put into an ambulance, and sent to the hospital in the same season. Right. And yet, we're talking about how great of a story is that Damar Hamlin, can breathe on his own now. It's yeah.
Damar had a lot of support nationwide because of the people that saw that play and saw what happened to him on the field. Naturally, he has a lot of support here in Pittsburgh. But if you're not from here, and if you don't really follow football very closely, you probably didn't know who Damar was prior to all of this. He is early in his career. He hasn't made the name for himself quite yet. The other players have. Probably hasn't made that same money yet either that other players do over time. So if it turns out that, this was a career-ending injury for him, what do you think some of his options are? Because it's like he is so young that you don't even have the tenure to even be a broadcaster. You know what I mean? People still,
he better get his coaching skills up. I don't know. Like, I don't see football in his immediate future. And he already, I know we think of every NFL player as the millionaire with the mansion and the multiple cars or the 12 bathrooms, but like, that's not him. He's only 2 years into this thing. His contract pays him less than $1 million a year. I don't want to get too into it, but taxes is going to probably take half of that.
Right.
He's not making what we like to call generational wealth type of money.
Right. Plus inflation. It's like $1 million isn't getting you anywhere anymore, which is sad to say.
Not when eggs are $6.
Not when eggs. Not when eggs at $6 for a dozen.
Yeah. So he has, like you say, he hasn't vested yet, so he won't get 5 years of health insurance paid for him once he's out.
Right.
But he's going to have it rough. And I guess good on the Bills for, it's been reported they're working out where he'll get his full salary over these next couple of years. And the same thing happened with Shazier for the Steelers. But
right. Beyond that point, what happens?
Yeah, he has a $4 million contract, I think. And that's just not going to go far, especially now where I'm assuming, and I don't know this for sure, but he probably has extensive damage to his lungs, which is going to take a lot of medical care going forward. And he's just, like I said, he should probably take some of that money for himself. This is the first time I would ever say take money from your charity, but he's going to need it just as much as these kids do.
Is this a risk just across playing football in general? Isn't playing any position in this game dangerous? Or are the positions that players like Damar Hamlin end up, being put in, are they more dangerous?
Well, one, football is just a dangerous sport, right?
Yeah.
The odds of this happening are pretty high just by the mere size, speed, and strength of the people doing it. And as far as the position, the NFL had a study a couple years ago that identified the positions that are most likely to sustain concussions. And wouldn't you be surprised that defensive back is number 1? And, my story touched on how race plays a part in this. Not that trauma to your chest or concussions are racist by any means, but like he plays cornerback, which is the most likely to get a concussion based on a study that the NFL did. And then Anscape 5 years ago did a study looking at the demographics of positions, and for cornerback, 99% of them are black. So, and on the flip side, quarterback, which is one of the least likely to get a concussion, up until recently was almost exclusively white men. So black players, you know, are more likely to get hurt. And also, you know, looking at quarterback salaries, you know, get paid the least as well. And so, yeah, he was playing the most dangerous position essentially in the sport, and he got hurt. And now, going back to the money part, he doesn't have that money to fall back on like a Tom Brady or Matthew Stafford or whoever might. It's just going to be difficult for him.
Why are we still watching football after what we've seen, after what we know? Why are we still watching it?
We're all degenerates, Morgan. That's why we just love violence. We love, you know, the culture and history of the sport. And I'm one of them, right? Like they said after Damar Hamlin, they compare this kind of like war where it's like, whoa, shoot, if you die, you die. And it's like, that's a weird way of looking.
You shouldn't go into your job. Yeah, thinking that. I want to think that I'm not going to die doing this podcast today, and I would hope that players on the field aren't going to die playing a game.
Yeah. But, you know, they've accepted the risks of this. You know, I look around and still 15 to 20 million people watch each of these games every single week. So I'm like, well, I have no guilt then. If they're fine with it, if we're all fine with it, then I can watch. But overall, we just love the sport. We love the violence of it. The reason why the NFL and really the NBA too are called soft these days is because there's rules put in place to protect the players from these gruesome injuries. And so even if the numbers don't show up, we like the sport less because it's less violent. But again, we can just compare it to America at large, and football is all, you know, the patriotism wrapped up in it and all this other stuff. We just love it too much to give it up.
What do you see the future of football becoming? Like, are we going to stop watching it? Is it getting too gruesome for us to stomach?
I think eventually we'll gravitate towards either some form of like 7-on-7 or something like tag or flag football. And I know no one wants to hear that. I know it sounds crazy, but like, Damar Hamlin is going to be a wake-up call. And really the concussions before him were the wake-up call where less kids are playing youth sports. The ratings are still there for the NFL, but still, they understand, I think, that this is getting maybe a little bit too dangerous. I think if we see more Damar Hamlins happen, I think just for the integrity and the longevity of the sport, they'll have to take out the big hits. And at first, fans will not like it. They will hate it. And the defensive players will absolutely despise it. But if people still want to make millions, and if the owners still want to make billions, and if us as fans still want to watch some form of professional football, they'll have to go that route where you take out the big hits.
Martenzie Johnson is a senior writer for ESPN's Anscape. He's also a New England Patriots fan. We won't hold that against him. But we'll drop a link to his story, The Racial Makeup of the NFL is Why the Games Go On, in our show notes. Martenzie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Morgan. Appreciate it.
A little more news before you go. Well, Pittsburgh police are back to stopping drivers for minor traffic violations like an expired registration sticker. A city ordinance from 2021 blocked officers from doing that. According to Pittsburgh police data, the city's Black residents are disproportionately stopped by officers. Acting Chief Thomas Stangrecki told WESA the reversal of the ordinance was done in part to boost morale. Officers gave feedback that it was preventing them from doing their jobs. The Bureau said another reason for the ordinance reversal is because of a recent amendment to the state vehicle code regarding license plate obstruction. And the Pirates' 2023 season is getting a boost. Andrew McCutchen is coming back to Pittsburgh, possibly for his last season. The star center fielder helped the team end a 20-year losing streak, so we welcome him back with open arms. Kutch signed a 1-year contract to return to the Pirates, who drafted him out of high school in 2005. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city, so we'll see you then. I lost a bet, and I'm a woman of my word.